Arc the Lad is a series of strategy RPG games published by Sony Computer Entertainment, with the first game coming out in 1995. It's considered a niche series, with the most well-known of it being Arc the Lad: Twilight of the Spirits, a game originally released for the PS2 in 2003 that has been digitally re-released for modern consoles. We don't talk about the End of Darkness. The first three games, however, aren't really known in the West for a number of reasons. One, they weren't released until roughly 6 years after the first game's release. Two, they were released as a big bundled collection, retailing at $75 USD. If we adjust for inflation, that's about $134 in 2025, just to put that all into perspective. The collection was expensive. And three, they didn't really make a lot of these. About a decade after their release, the three games were available digitally on the PS3 and Vita, but they haven't been re-released since, and the digital store on the PS3 was something. And then, of the three, most people tend to talk about the first two games. Those two are really one big game, with the first one serving more as a prologue to the epic story that Arc the Lad 2 had in store. For many, Arc the Lad 3 is like an afterthought. It's the third game featuring a completely different cast of characters, with only the occasional cameo from the legacy character. And while the tone of the first two games is fairly dark, the third game seems almost silly by comparison. But when I played this game as a kid, it was just the kind of game I needed at the time. It wasn't anything revolutionary or whatever, but it was a solid game in its own right, with characters that I loved and adored. And I've noticed that no one really talks about this game. Twilight of the Spirits gets most of the conversation, and rightfully so. That's a darn good game right there. And maybe one day I'll do a video on it to give myself an excuse to replay it. Arc the Lad 1 and 2 get covered more because they're a sprawling epic, with a lot of unexpected twists and turns for their time. But what about Arc the Lad 3? So, I want to talk about it. I do need to be fair, so I sat down and replayed the game the whole way through, looking at it with a more critical lens. Now let's talk about the story, the characters, and the gameplay, and all of that. And let's not hold back either, especially when looking at it through a 2025 lens. A game can hold up, but still not be for everyone. So the question I want to answer with this video is this third game in an obscure strategy RPG series worth playing? And if so, who is it for? But to be clear, you don't need to be familiar with the first two games to play this one. Yes, they're connected, and yes, it'll hit harder if you do. But the game does explain it pretty well, or at least enough that you won't be lost, and hopefully it'll make you go back and play the other games, if you haven't already. Throughout this video, I'll be solely focusing on the third game. But I do know that, yeah, this game is calling back to its predecessors frequently, and it's nice without being intrusive. And look, I accepted when I sat down and opened up my notepad file to write this video, that it wasn't going to do well. Arc the Lad is an obscure JRPG series in the English-speaking world. The collection got released at the tail end of the PS1's lifespan, and Working Designs was so broke that they couldn't even release part 2 of their strategy guide series for it. But I don't make videos for the clicks and views and all that. I make videos for me and put things I want to see out in the world. And, well, I have a lot of fond memories of this game that I wanted to share. So let's talk about it. God, where do I even begin? I've simplified the plot a lot for the sake of this video, so let me be clear. This game is a slow burn. It builds upon itself, and the villain isn't obvious from the outset. The call to adventure that Alec answers isn't, the actual plot. And this type of game isn't for everyone. And that's okay. It's a lot of world building with, let's be frank, a lot of yapping. Personally, I enjoyed it back then because I felt it made the world feel that much more lived in. But for other people, it can really be too much. I mean, even for me, it can be a lot. When I was replaying the game in preparation for this video, I had to do it in small doses or brace myself for the yap fests. The game starts a few years after an event called the Great Disaster, where the world basically got wrecked and some places are better off than others. A young man named Alec, who now lives in quiet little Sasha village on the remote continent of Eteru Island, dreams of being a hunter, a mercenary type who accepts quests from the Hunters Guild to help others. He vaguely remembers being saved by one during the Great Disaster, and is inspired to be just like him one day. He's encouraged by his friend Lutz, who is very excitable. Lutz is your token dumb teenage boy, but he's doing his best, okay? He's doing his best. The story kicks off when bandits attack their village, and Alec and Lutz manage to escape to the nearby town of Ishio to hire a hunter to handle them. This motivates Alec to leave the village, with Lutz along for the ride, and work to become a hunter. They start off pretty small. One quest has them chasing mice out of a storage unit, while another is just basic monster hunting. But they're working to boost their profile, so they'll hopefully be able to take a job that allows them to leave Eteru Island and see the world beyond it. That opportunity comes along pretty quickly. Alec and Lutz are sent off on a job overseas to Forestamore, which was ruined during the Great Disaster and is partially underwater. There, they meet a boy named Theo. Long story short, Theo sees these two idiots going out and doing their things and decides, hey, I can do that too. And after a little jaunt off to a bunch of ruins nearby, Theo picks up the power to turn monsters into summonable cards. And Alec and Lutz pick up a new party member. As they continue to do jobs in Forestamore, they meet a woman named Sharon who works for something called the Academy. No one really knows what the Academy is, but they're slightly concerning from the get-go because they have the power to rile monsters up. Let's put a pin in that for now, though. Alec and the gang then get a job to go to North Sularto, a region that got turbo-wrecked by the Great Disaster. The main town, Gizlem, is what can only really be described as a slum. They meet a weapons expert by the name of Cheryl, who is really prickly and definitely not our next party member if we believe what she says. Cheryl doesn't trust anyone and clashes with the party for a bit as they do jobs around the region. Eventually, though, she's forced to team up with them when Alec picks up a job to take things down to South Solarto along with her. It's around this point that Academy weirdness starts to pick up. In the midst of the wrecked town of Gizlem, there's a perfectly nice building, an office for the Academy. Additionally, there's word of people just disappearing, and later on, Cheryl gets surrounded by Academy goons who demand that she come with them. She gets away, and it's very clear that the Academy is not cool, and is probably the main villain of this story that's starting to form. When they reach South Sularto, they really catch wind of the Academy's nonsense when the Academy snatches people from town in broad daylight, and then they steal a desert town's source of sustenance, the water orb. Their goal, apparently, is to restore the world to a prosperous state by any means necessary. How they plan on doing this isn't exactly clear, though. Anyway, Alec and the others manage to snatch the water orb back, and the Academy is officially on their shit list. Also, Cheryl is now officially our bro, sis. Bro sis. The gang then heads off to Jaharta to pass off some information from the guilds to the World Library. They meet a promising mage by the name of Marcia at a nearby magic academy or whatever and work with her to stop a rogue hunter that was a former friend of hers. It turns out that this guy, Tikva, was swayed by the academy to steal the water control scroll from the local monks. If you can believe it, this dude is totally a pawn who gets tossed aside the moment they get what they want from him. It's also at this point that we meet the head of the academy, who goes by the name of Professor. He's some hot blonde nerd who kinda sucks. Tikva is captured and super sorry, so he gets to live to fight another day. Marcia joins the gang as well, because of course she does. She'll be super useful in like 15 hours when we get her plasma nuke spell. Yay! After dealing with more shenanigans, the group is sent to Perute to deliver a letter to a man by the name of Lishalt, who apparently has connections to the academy. He has a brother named Velhart, who is basically budget Sephiroth. No, I'm serious. Look at him. Look at his moveset. They knew what they were doing. Anyway, they find out there's a tournament going on, and the prize is a statue with a special stone that's caught the academy's eye. If you can believe it, the gang is eventually asked by Lishalt to participate in order to win the statue and safeguard it. This means fighting a bunch of people, including Velhart in the finals. And even if you win, Velhart snatches the statue anyway and is super annoying about it. This is because he is terrible at communication and cannot use his mouth words to tell people that, oh yeah, the academy is holding his brother hostage unless he gets the statue for them. Cool. The group infiltrates yet another secret base of the academy, only to find the professor, whose actual name is apparently Ludwig because, okay, cloning the stone or whatever. When LeChault tries to disrupt the process and take back the original stone, he's killed by the professor's cronies. Velhart swears revenge on them and joins our motley crew. Now our party is full up, until we get the optional character. Back at the Hunters Guild, Alec and the others meet the masters of all the different guilds, who task the group with going after the academy. But they'll need a mode of travel. They can get a hovercraft in this very annoying cave with very annoying puzzles. Seriously, look at this. From here on, the game opens wide up. The format up to this point was go to town, do jobs, trigger next main mission, move on. Now, you have clear story objectives you can follow. And there are also still the usual side jobs, but you're not required to do them and you don't really need to do too many to trigger your story missions. At this point, the goal is pretty clear. Take out the academy. And they start by going to... Oh. That's certainly a choice. In going after the academy, the gang gets some casual lore drops, like how the academy yoinked Theo's mom and probably murdered her. You know, stuff like that, no biggie. Despite our group's best efforts, the professor uses the scroll and crystal he stole to revive the Sky Castle, intent on harnessing the energy that's built up in there to better the world. You know, the same energy that caused the Great Disaster. At this point, even his own subordinate is like, girl, what? It's also revealed that this energy is a sentient being known as the Dark One. I'm starting to think this dude might not be a real professor, you guys. The gang's task shifts from stop the Academy to mitigate the Academy's damage by immediately sealing the Dark One in a can. And by can, I mean arc. Alec is given a list of things to collect to make said arc, and proceeds to revisit all the other continents to wrap up the party's various character arcs. Velhart learns anger management. Marcia works on her self-esteem. Theo can talk to monsters now. Cheryl learns to trust people. And Lutz is... well, he's Lutz. With all the pieces in place and the arc successfully made, Alec and his friends infiltrate the Sky Castle and go through several annoying maps and beat up many annoying things, including the hunter that saved Alec at the beginning, who apparently was working for the Academy. Seriously, this reveal came way too late in the game for it to matter, so whatever. And eventually have to fight the Dark One and seal it with the power of friendship. Everyone then goes their separate ways, determined to live their best lives and rebuild the world on their own rather than relying on some magic power to insta-fix things. The end. Obviously, this is a simplified version of the story. There's a lot more going on, especially towards the end, but we'd be here all day if I detailed every little thing. Like I said, the game's a slow burn and is more interested in really honing in on the characters and the minutiae rather than having some big epic plot. Though it does get big and epic around 3/4 of the way through. You know, your mileage may vary. The battle system itself is pretty straightforward for a strategy RPG. You can deploy up to 4 characters at the start of a battle. Then, each character can move around the field accordingly and attack. Some characters have more range than others, so it's a matter of looking at the terrain, who you got, and going from there. Cheryl, for example, has some attacks that hit harder from a distance, which makes sense given that she's the munitions expert. So ideally, you want Cheryl to be attacking from a distance. Alec and Velhart, however, need to get closer since they're the heavy hitters and aren't as squishy as, say, Cheryl or Theo. And then Lutz is my good fast boy who can go wherever. As you've probably guessed, each character has their own specialty. Marcia has magic, Cheryl has guns, Theo is your Kardish master who summons monsters, Alec actually has the healing spells, Lutz is fast and has lots of range, and Velhart stabs. Yeah, based on the fight, you may need to build your party accordingly and attack, or be like me and brute force everything. When I first played the game, I made Lutz into a monster. I just remember him nuking everything. On a replay, I'm not quite sure how I did that, but I was younger and had a lot of time on my hands. You know how I broke the magic system? I wandered around each new area and drew magic. And kept drawing. And kept drawing. And kept drawing. The way characters get experience is a little different though. It reminds me of Fire Emblem, where the characters gain experience based on the actions that they specifically make. Even defending or making no moves gets you experience, though not nearly as much as attacking. Killing an enemy nets you a lot of experience as well, so it's better to let your lower level characters snipe the kills to catch up. Additionally, the more you level up, the more your own moves level up. For example, Lutz's knife range starts off only hitting 5 squares. The more it levels up, the more ground it covers. So ideally, you're using your spells and skills frequently to make them, as well as yourself, even stronger. The battle system's fine. I think it's fun. There are some issues sometimes, like how some spells will just never level up because they take forever. It can also be a little slow at times, but Arc the Lad battles in general seem to want to encourage the player to slow it down and actually think about the fight in front of them. What's the best way to go about this battle? The game encourages you to take your time. It is a strategy RPG, but where do the battles come into play? Well, mostly you'll fight through jobs you pick up at the Hunters Guild. This is a system that's carried over from Arc the Lad 2. It's like the Bracer missions in the Trails series. You go to the guild, pick up a number of jobs, and then complete the jobs for money and experience and to progress the story. In this game, the guild jobs are the framing device, but we'll get to that in a few. It's an interesting concept. I did find it tedious at times, but not all jobs are required, so it was easy for me to just not do the jobs that I found annoying. So, let's talk about the localization. I said the following about working designs in my video on Lunar Remastered. Unfortunately, they did go a little far with localizing. I distinctly remember a Bill Clinton joke in the first game, and they usually did this when they came across a joke that didn't translate well, and their humor was, well, that. It had its charm, but doesn't play that well today. Now, to be fair, I don't think they went as buck wild with the Arc the Lad series as they did with some others. Okay, mostly. However, there were some embellishments, to the point where one character's characterization was actually affected. According to a post by Koba Beach on romhacking.net, someone who played the game in Japanese, something I do have an issue with is a implication in Arc 2 that was literally added in for flavor in Working Designs' version, and a lot of Arc 3 replacing many terms. Kigayowai to describe Kobal, a timid child, Pepa Hanta to describe the second lowest hunter rank, Oji-san to describe a painter struck with arc rock, with just Sissy, Sissy Hunter, and fruit. Not to mention Chongara speaking in broken English in all games because racism is funny, I guess. Yikes. But I noticed this with Lutz, and I wondered if a lot of his dialogue was played up. His voice is very strong in all of his lines, and what I mean by that is, even when you read it, without hearing an actual voice actor behind it, you get a strong sense of the character. It's like you can hear a voice in your head, like when you're reading a good book that you can visualize. But some of the lines are, well, this. I know some people watching this will be like, what's the problem? It's not like it's an actual slur or anything. It was a different time. And yeah, I hear you. I get you. Give me like a minute, please, and hear me out. I like to think about it from this perspective. Can we get the same point across with other words? I was an English major before I was a film major, so I really got a lot out of college. But I also think a lot about language and how it's utilized across media. And to me, looking back on Working Designs as localizations, a lot of the off-color jokes seem to have also been done for flavor. Back to the comment by Koba Beach. Oji-san is a term often used in this context when referring to a middle-aged man, and it's mildly impolite. Lutz's carefree nature could have been easily gotten across if he called the guy old fart. Instead, he uses fruit? Like, what does that even add? It's disappointing because there's so much good in Working Designs' script, and this just feels lazy. Going for the low-hanging fruit, if you will. With all that said, I feel like the characters are the biggest strength of the game, and the aforementioned flavor aside, Working Designs' localization only benefits them, which is good since you're going to be spending hours upon hours with them. A big part of the game are the side quests, and they can be a lot. I talked about them earlier, so I won't go into much more detail, but I did end up doing a lot of the quests because I wanted to see the dialogue. Moving on, I love the art direction in this game. Admittedly, yeah, a lot of it seems muddy at times, but then you remember that this world was literally destroyed a few years ago, and this is the aftermath. Colorful places are few and far in between. It's fascinating to see how different cities are recovering. Part of Forestamore is underwater, for example, and people have started settling on top of buildings peeking out from these new lakes. North Sularto got utterly wrecked, and Gizlem reflects that with its decayed feel. And then you have the rich people in Perute, who are pretty fine for the most part. The environmental storytelling is really cool. But I also love the sprites. They're so expressive and fun. The PS1 era was really interesting in terms of sprites, where you had some games doing full 3D, while others embraced their pixelated roots, and the Arc the Lad series up until this point was more the latter. I love how much personality there is in each one. Gosh. I will say that some of the NPCs that recur are kind of samey in terms of design. There's enough of them without quite as much variance that I get them mixed up. Characters like Alba and his group, or Henrietta and her whole questline stand out, but some of the others are like, who were you again? Were you the orphanage lady or the gal that sings? But that's a nitpick. I do think that all in all, it works for the story they're telling. Mostly, because it took me entirely too long to figure out that these were chests. Whoops. But, okay, my favorite part about the game? It's the song. Way to the Earth, or Way of the Earth as it's known in the Working Designs version, is a song specifically written for this game. It pops up again and again, and it is catchy. The song was composed by Masahiro Ando, a member of the Japanese band T-Square. Funnily enough, he worked as a video game composer for the Arc the Lad series and a bunch of Gran Turismos. There's 3 versions of this song. The original Japanese version, an English version that's really rough, and then an English localized version by Working Designs, which is credited to Victor Ireland. In the game, the song is sung by a woman named Raya, dedicating it to her partner who passed away during the Great Disaster. And at its core, it's about processing grief and moving on while still keeping a part of your past close to your heart. And maybe it's a little cheesy, but for me, it hits so hard, man. I've had this stupid song stuck in my head for weeks while I worked on this video, so you know what? Here you go. Okay, before we answer this question, we have to view it in a void. Ignore the Arc 1 and 2 elephants in the room for now. We'll touch on that in a bit. On its own, I would say that Arc the Lad 3 is an okay game. I think it had its charms, and I like the story and combat system just fine. But, and this pains me to say, it pained me to type as I was writing out the script. I don't think I can fully recommend it to people without some major caveats. Let's be super honest here. I had a hard time getting through my replay. I would play a few parts for a bit, and then get distracted and wander off. Now, that could just be how I am. My attention span's real bad sometimes. However, I replayed Legaia not that long ago, and that held my attention all the way through. I got about halfway through the game before I just had to stop for a bit and take a break. Arc 3, I really had to hype myself up to get in and play it at first. But when I did play Arc 3, I had fun for the most part. I think what the issue was is that, to me, the guild quests felt really repetitive after a while. See, the game itself falls into a certain rhythm after a while. You'd get to a new town, meet a character, and then do a guild quest to establish yourself. And then you'd have to do anywhere from 1 to 4 or 5 or more quests, depending on what was available. You're really only required to do 1 or 2 to advance, but you could do more. And then you'd have another required quest. Then more optional quests where you need to do at least one of the batch, and then a quest that moves the plot along and maybe takes you to a new town. Wash, rinse, repeat. The quests in theory drive the story of the game, and they were great at first for establishing the world and helping you get a feel for it. But after a while, some of them were just busy work. I say some of them though, because others would lead to ongoing storylines that would really connect you to the world as a whole. Heck, there's a hidden character you can get through doing these quests. Henrietta Rochefort is a spoiled rich girl that you meet during the Perude section of the story. She's one of the many recurring clients that Alec has, where she'll give him job after job to do. The thing is, if you do all these jobs correctly and give her flowers during another job, you'll get the option of having her join your party. And honestly, I think this is cool. Yeah, it's difficult and not exactly intuitive, but character-wise, it makes sense. Henrietta grows as a person throughout her questline, and you see the impact that Alec has on her. That said, I thought I did everything right, but totally beefed it when it came to getting her on my replay. That's what I get for not doing all the quests, I guess. Girl, I gave you flowers. With that said, like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't excited to sit down and play the game because I knew I'd be sitting through a bunch of random guild quests. And I didn't do everything, mind you, just to get to the meat of the story. There were some really good one-off quests that helped flesh out the characters more, like one involving Cheryl and Pesus. But for every one like that, there's another tedious one that's not really necessary. How Long to Beat puts the main story completion time at around 41 hours, and I would argue that that's because the devs heavily pad the story and draw things out with animations. I mean, here's a side quest where this dude decides to shake everyone's hand. I'm going to play this out in full. In fact, I'm cutting the music in post. Here we go. Mm-hmm. 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 Yup. Yeah. And listen, I love the animations in this game. I think the sprites are really cute and expressive, but come on. The guild system was a double-edged sword for this game. It was great for fleshing out the world, but also a way for the devs to pad their game with annoying minigames or stuff that didn't really matter. The game also really wanted you to grind. And before anyone asks, no, this wasn't Working Designs' fault this time. Going back to that post by Koba Beach, they said, I've been playing Arc the Lad over the past few years, and they seem generally the same as the Japanese versions, with some minor adjustments, UI improvements, and digitized artwork for portraits in one. The story itself is fine. It's interesting, and it's nice to see a party not immediately get involved in world-ending stuff. Instead, they just get dragged into it organically. I think the strong characterization really carries it. So in a Void, I would say, if you're interested in old RPGs and you have the means to fast forward battles and quests, it's worth considering playing it. Now, let's talk about it when we throw Arcs 1 and 2 back in the mix. I said from the top that I wasn't going to cover them because this video would get really long. So this is going to be short and sweet. Arc the Lad 1 and 2 were considered RPG classics in Japan. Compared to those two, which are deeply intertwined, Arc 3 was always set up for failure. I mean, Arc 2's ending was, shall we say, not conventional in the slightest. Meanwhile, Arc 3's was more your standard fare. And while I always tend to gravitate towards more hopeful narratives, even I can recognize that Arc 2 took several swings while Arc 3 was playing it safe. And it doesn't help that after 3 came Twilight of the Spirits, which is an incredible game and still holds up today. Compared to those games, yeah, Arc 3 is just fine. It's fine. It's fine. But it had its charm, and its cast, to me, was very solid. They've stuck with me all these years, as has the music. So if we're being perfectly honest, then I'd say that Arc the Lad 3 is just an okay game at best, but it's an RPG that has its own charm. For me, I liked it more than 2, even if, objectively speaking, I can recognize that, on paper, 2 is the better game. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Look, ultimately, I feel like Arc the Lad 3 is about life going on and hope, which is what the end of the second game promised. It's about the build-up, and that isn't for everyone, and that's okay. So I guess in a way, they took some kind of swing by making it different from 2. As fond as I am of this game, despite its very, very obvious flaws, I can't in good conscience straight up recommend this game to people. It's a slow burn, and it can be, quite frankly, super tedious, even for people like me who went in loving the game. There are better Arc the Lad games out there. But I think there's some solid character work in this game. Even when the game was tedious, I wanted to keep going because I genuinely enjoyed all of these characters and my time with them. Working Designs' localization style was mostly beneficial to the game too. I just wish there wasn't the embellishments like, you know. For me anyway, I feel like this game is a good example of a slow burn RPG. It's a game where you can put it down, wander off for a bit, and then return to it fairly easily. I think it plays better if you do take your time rather than trying to mainline it. And there's so much about it to take in, from the music to the art direction to the care that Working Designs, mostly, put into the Western release. So, to answer the question I posed at the beginning, is this game worth playing and who is it for? I hesitate to recommend it in 2025 with all my heart, but I'm still deeply fond of it. Like I said earlier, it's not a game that's for everyone. But if you're a fan of strong character work and the game structure sounds interesting, give this one a shot. It's a fun time. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this is your first time seeing one of my videos, hi! I'm Jury, and I make videos and stream about a variety of things, from video essays to gacha pulls. If you like what I'm making, please consider subscribing and leave a comment, especially on this video, because it's gonna tank. I'll see you in the next video.